Thanks, Shalini. Thanks to the FDPPI forum. I keep asking for slots based on my interest, and I keep getting those slots. So I really appreciate the forum as such. So today, I'm just going to talk about and a very high-level view of data discovery and classification. This has been my interest area, and if you look at privacy and data security, so keeping privacy aside, because I know that we have discussed enough in various topics, and the laws and all of that has already been taken care of now from a knowledge perspective. Today, why I picked up this topic is because you're going to the next level in terms of the data security, right? Now, given an organization who's at a stage where they are in the process of adopting compliance to laws, doing business process changes, and so on, it is imperative to see in a given scenario of a privacy data set or a set of data elements which need protection, how will the organization put technical measures so that the data is secured, again from a processing standpoint. So that is the context and the background. So here I will step into a little bit of the cybersecurity terminologies and some of the aspects of how data security is evolving in this space. Okay, so that's the background to this topic. Now, I have actually done some study on these, uh, the big players in this area, which is Microsoft, OneTrust, Bolden James, and Titus. And again, to let you know that I have done my own research, so it does not represent the organization activities which are happening in my organization where I'm employed with. Okay. So I just want to introduce the 4D concept. So one is data intelligence, the data discovery and classification, of course, data loss prevention, which most of us must be familiar with as a terminology, and the data governance. So why we talk about data intelligence is in any given scenario where the organization, I can take an example of a payroll service provider, be it Hewitt or Aon or whoever in the Indian scenario. They have data from various customers, and also that they build uh, reports and share data with their customers after doing some processing. So that is where intelligence comes in into the data which is there with such organizations. Yeah. And when we talk about data discovery and data classification, we are talking about the types of data which are available in a particular organization, where all they will be existing. So discovery word comes from the fact that any organization which has evolved over 10 to 15 years will have some legacy data sitting in their systems, in their various storage locations, and even in data in transit, which means in emails, or now if they have migrated to cloud, it will be in OneDrive and so on. Such data needs to be discovered and then classified. What is classification? We will talk. At a high level, it means that you need to tag the data with a tag which is defined at the organization level. And why we are talking about data loss prevention? See, data loss prevention comes from a fact that if you look at the whole buzzword these days is about data breaches, right? Now, data breaches are happening. How do you prevent data loss? So that is the concept applied here. Why? By doing a data discovery and applying the classification policy and implementing security measures through tools is when data loss prevention can happen. So that's the process. And all of this, when you do, there has to be a governance layer around this where we constantly have a review of the risks of data, either from a loss perspective or sharing data from between departments from a data has to be shared only based on need. So the governance around how data is kept secured, how access control has happened, and so on. So all those aspects come into data governance. So that's why I'm saying the buzzword would be 4Ds in our scenario. Now, what is data discovery? So business process which is put in place to identify data patterns by reviewing the data to help actionable insights. What does it mean? Say, in a scenario, as I said, from a HR data perspective, there are various customers data which is available with this payroll service provider as an example. And this payroll service provider is actually collecting the data from these customers through various methods, through various sources. And they are storing it, processing it, and giving the reports or any actions which they need to take going back to the customer. So during that process, the first step is collection of the data. The next would be how do you review the data, analyze the data, and prepare the data for the end goal. Then how do you share the data, right? So whether there are enough security mechanisms for doing all these activities, that is what is coming here. And then develop the insights in terms of the actionable intelligence which needs to be shared with their customers. And for that you will have visualization and reports and so on. Also, we talk about need based actions. For example, in an organization which is having employees data, and based on the regulatory requirements, they need to comply saying that the data of the employees should not be stored after they have left the organization and the period is more than 7 years, which means there is a need to identify actions of deletion or disposal of data from such systems. Okay, so that is the concept of data discovery. What is the process? So there are just very simple three steps. One is you have to identify what data you are talking about. Now this data can be existing in structured form or in unstructured form. What is structured form? Either through in applications, databases, some ERP systems, and so on, where there is a structure to the data. Like you have an example will be a columns and number of rows in a table, right? So that data is what we are talking about. Then unstructured data could be some uh, ad hoc files. Say somebody has created an Excel sheet of all employees who have joined on a particular date and with a particular grade, right? With a date of joining, the gender and date of birth and so on. All the PII data elements are there. That Excel sheet would be coming under the unstructured bucket. Similarly, you will have data which is there in emails, or the if they have migrated to a cloud platform like O365 Microsoft, that data also will come under unstructured data. So first you identify the data, what is your business goal, identify those processes, and then you go and do the apply the classification to it, right? So identify data, define the policies. What is the policy now? The policies is about talking about data classification. What kind of data has to be categorized as what kind of classifications, we'll talk about it. Basically, the classification will cover labeling the files, giving permissions, having access privileges, defining the access levels based on roles. So all of those aspects will come in. That is what is the process here. Now, how will you do it? So, in a typical example, as I said, you will have business processes generating data, right? So, as and when employees are joining the organization, you will have data created for such new joinees, and it will keep getting stored in various locations. Now, in some organizations, the practice is to have systems in place where they have, application and a storage database. They also do a data collection from the the employees by way of taking hard copy documents, right? So hard copy data also will be there as a evidence of their proof of identity would be taken. They'll take Aadhaar card or a PAN number or whatever, right? So basically, the essence is you have to define the single source of truth in the organization. If you take a HR record of an employee, what is what is the basic record? Where is it stored within the HR department? What typically also happens is even if you have a system or a ERP system in place, there are a lot of ad hoc requirements of generating reports of employees where this single source of truth gets distributed across the departments, right? So we need to make sure that your system which is there in place is the only single source of truth. And then when it comes to applying the policies, we need to establish how that policy will work on identification of a particular record and searching in your storage locations where all that particular record is existing, right? And then applying the business rule which you want to apply from a data discovery perspective. So data discovery is about identifying data and locating the single source of truth and identifying of the locations of data so that they are securely handled. The security element comes into this classification and the data discovery process. And we must have also heard about the endpoint detection, EDR, the advanced threat protection. These are all the terminologies which are used by vendors for providing data loss prevention capability in their products. And these products will have elements of how the features of how the data can be discovered and how data can be classified. So these are the two aspects where a lot of vendors are playing in this space. And it again depends on what is the stage of your organization in terms of your security posture. So you would have evolved as an organization, say on-prem, all the databases will be there. There will be uh, network security. You'll have perimeter security. You'll have access control to the data center. You must have evolved as an organization through that route. But going forward, you must be also, because of the scale of volume of business which is happening and the volume of data which is growing in your organization, you would evolve to look for solutions which are secure and easily accessible, right? So there is always a lot of organizations now are thinking about migrating their data to cloud or identifying which is the data which will remain on-prem, which is the data they would like to maintain on the cloud, so that the security aspects are addressed by the cloud service provider. So coming back here, point number 4 here, identify what is required to be done with the legacy data. Say, as I said, if you have evolved over the last 10 years with data which is sitting in your systems, you need to identify what will be your requirement to handle such data and what is your retention requirement for this data at rest. Then when the data is actually when you are collecting data on an ongoing basis based on your business requirement, how will you what is the requirement to have data in use and the data in motion from a going forward implementation of strategy perspective, right? So as and when data is moving into your system, what secure mechanisms you will implement as part of that process. That is the essence of this. And of course, I've just brought in this application of data minimization principle so that everyone takes care of the organization takes care of ensuring that only the minimal data is collected as per the requirement of the regulation, right? And then establish secure mechanisms for data at rest and data in use and data in motion. The policy definition is a very critical one. So all of these, I'll be talking about the tools which we are reviewing now in this call. uh, there is a phase where you need to identify the policy at the tool level. So basically, if you look at a tool like a data discovery tool, there will be a policy configuration feature where they will have predefined policies. Example, if you are from a financial services industry, what will be your PII? What will be your personal data which you would like to have the policy applied to? Example could be a credit card information, or if you look at from a GDPR perspective, if you have GDPR related data, what is that data? Whether you have date of birth, gender, and all of those elements in your data, that would have to be identified. So at the policy level, you need to pick up what are the domains which will be financial services, healthcare industry, or the any other industry, insurance, and so on. Within that industry, what are your personal data elements which you want to have the policy defined around, which means you need to provide keywords of personal data, right? For example, your for GDPR and all of these tools, they come with their predefined policies. We just need to tweak it, ensure that it is comprehensively representing your business scenario, and then implement it. So there is a lot of flexibility in the tools which we are talking about in the market now. And then, as I said, there has to be a monitoring, governance, and a periodic update to the process so that the legal requirements from the business are met. Okay, so this is how the data discovery will work. Now, coming to data classification. So, basically, the process of analyzing the data and categorizing the data in the file types and the contents, other than and the other metadata which is sitting on the file, right? That process is called the classification. And if you look at, there are a lot of these standards. If you look at NIST and even the ISO, there are they have their own definitions of how the classification should be. Standard classification talks about basically the public, or the restricted, confidential, internal, and so on. So that again, the market practices that they go by the standard which is provided by the industry adopted organizations like Microsoft and so on. And we need to identify this classification, identify the rules for classification, and implement them from the data which you are talking about in terms of the classification. So, for example, if you look at RFP file where you are actually wanting some outsourced vendor to answer questions on a application which you would like them to develop, right? So in that RFP questions or the answers which you want to collect, there the data is actually being sent to the outside party. You will identify what kind of classification you will apply to it. Either it could be public or it could be restricted based on what kind of data is sitting in that particular document. And this classification needs to cover the whole gamut of type of data which you have in your organization. Meaning, if you have hard copy files, you have to identify what kind of classification you'll apply. If you have data stored in emails, that email process or the email configuration, whenever you create a new email, it should prompt you to give a automated classification and allow a user to override it and update it. So that kind of example is what about classification, right? Similarly, if you have a PDF file or an Excel sheet where you have the whole company's employees data, right, and that data is used for analysis by the PMO function for looking at what kind of experience level we have across the board, what kind of grades we have, what kind of skill sets we have. That data in that particular Excel sheet or a PDF needs to be classified as confidential or can be restricted. That data should not be shared outside. So that is how data classification happens, right? Now, this slide I just kept, for an understanding in terms of what kind of security solutions are evolving in this space, right? So first you have to define, say, you take a baseline of your organization in terms of where we are, what kind of security solutions you have. You must be having a virus protection, a McAfee or a Symantec or something. Then you must have also implemented certain endpoint controls for it. Because of a work from home scenario, you must have implemented secure solutions on your laptop, that from the laptop you should not be able to copy download data. So your USB drive must have been disabled. Then at the email level, when an employee is working from home, the email should not it should have controls to ensure that no personal data is shared through email as an attachment and sent to any other email ID other than the customer email IDs. Example could be, your email system should have a restriction to not allow sending emails to Gmail and Yahoo and so on. Right? Those are personal email domains. So that is one. Then, similarly, when you actually create data, you need to identify whether there is personal data or there is sensitive personal data, right? So based on that information, you will identify the classification of that particular um, data. Now, when you talk about data security and privacy policies, right, as I said, data security solutions need to be adopted looking at what stage of your security posture the organization is. For example, if you have already put in controls like multi-factor authentication when you log in into the system, or you have ensured that VPN connection has to be established before you actually start delivery to your customer, all of those aspects need to be considered as a baseline. Then you need to look at what kind of solutions you're looking for in terms of implementing secure uh, protocols for ensuring data loss prevention. So that should be a end goal, right? Now, for example, the email security. Now, when emails are being sent by employees, there is a possibility of monitoring what kind of data is being attached to emails by the employee remotely through cloud solutions. So there are a lot of vendors in the market who are providing such monitoring and governance tools in the security space. So that is one aspect which we need to also look at. And then there also has to be this classification tool. So what the negative point of this implementation of tools also could be that there could be productivity impacts. Basically, you're expecting that an agent will be running on your laptop constantly, and that agent will try to classify files or should send alerts to the admin that there is some data which is actually being prepared for sending to through email. So there is a always a uh, positive or a negative point in terms of what will happen to the productivity of your laptop or the individual who's using that particular system. So that is the essence of this particular slide. This is the last slide. I would like to have this particular session to be an open discussion, and hence I have kept it very crisp in terms of the concept to be driven, and then talking about some of the tools which are in the market. So there is no correlation between these tools. I have just given a high level features of each of these. You can read vertically down. For example, Titus. Now, this Titus and Golden James are have been existing in the market for a while, more than I think for more than 5 years, right? And both of these companies were small players, which have been now acquired by this Help Systems. Okay, so Help Systems has taken over this two companies and their products. And if you look at Titus, the way it works is, as I said, there will be a console where you'll have to manage as an administrator the policies and monitor the data which is flowing through the workflow, right? So that console will throw out alerts, and these alerts can be acted upon. So they are close to real time monitoring of data based on how the data definition of the policies is, and where there is a potential violation to those policies which are defined. And as I said, we can also there will be checkboxes provided to identify keywords, and you can add keywords as well in the policy definition. Then it is very important for all of these tools which are now currently in the market to provide integration capabilities with the various kind of tools which are existing within organizations. For example, this Titus integrates with ForcePoint. Okay, and ForcePoint is a um, endpoint security solution which is typically implemented on laptops and desktops. In similar manner, you have Secure, and it also integrates with Box and the Microsoft and the Semantics and other kind of small players. So that is Titus. Now, if you come to Golden James, this is again this has been existing for a while. They are also marketing their product independently, right? They have classifier as a concept which they have put in their product, where the security labeling can be done using the classifier module, and that it can address it also addresses the three states of data, right? It has integration, or it caters, golden james products cater to all types of files. So it covers the drawing based cad files. It also integrates with the mac based files, sharepoint and cloud, etc., right? They also cater to email, mobile, and the such data. So there is lots to explore if you look at a golden james kind of scenario. And similarly, like Titus, it integrates with all of those, right? Now, coming to OneTrust, if you look at OneTrust, is basically a privacy-based tool, right? And it is more from governance and catering to the requirements of regulations across the globe from a privacy requirements perspective, right? But they have also implemented some modules which are ML based, and they have a concept of looking at which is the at risk data. So basically, you need to categorize the data, whether it is at high, medium, or low risk, and then put the label and then tagging and so on. Also, I have not explored much on this particular thing, but there is material which says that this particular OneTrust works without the agent. In what I have seen in Titus and Golden James, you need to install the agent to the endpoints, right? Whereas I have not explored much, but on OneTrust, it typically says that the agents are not required, right? And it addresses most of the file types which are listed across, and it enforces the policy using the secure controls, which is like encryption, masking, and access controls. Of course, keyword configuration also is available. Now, from a governance perspective, OneTrust is very strong in terms of the governance aspects of data management, right? So it has aspects of policy management, audit, the security risk processes, all of those, and the vendor risk management covered very well through the governance layer. So I found that OneTrust is pretty established on the governance side, right? Now, coming to Microsoft. So Microsoft, again, it's a large organization. It has been existing for a while. They have their own Azure Information Protection module, and it works very well with a lot of these tools, which are like ForcePoint, and it integrates with Secure and so on. So if you look at their tool base, the uh, it's a very structured way of approaching. So basically, it has the same concept. Basically, you do a data discovery, then you identify what kind of policies you would like to identify and baseline them, and then put the classification to all the data. An easy way of for organizations to look at this aspect would be that identify what data you are not able to make a decision on. For example, any data which is existing in your organization more than 20 years old. One of the things which we can do, and of course this data also includes backup, and which is available on tapes and various media, and it must be offline stored and so on, right? It is good to identify such data which you are not going to use for sure, or you are not going to have a legal query in the near future. Identify that data as not usable for the organization, and then put maybe secure mechanisms where you say that this is the data which is tagged as not to be used, or not will not be used, and then put secure mechanisms on that data where you say that this data is not accessible by anybody, or it is in a if it is a hard copy, then it is in lock and key, and by managed by the information security head or the data protection officer or whoever, right? So organizations need to think of a strategy, and every organization will have a different approach to such data classification and discovery. So as I was saying, Microsoft has it also has a cloud access security broker and a data loss prevention tool set, and data is encrypted. So again, I have not explored much into the Microsoft tool stack as well, but There is this looks to be a more established tool set from Microsoft. Obviously, of course, it's a large organization and they have a lot of customers. But if you look at the gist of this discussion today, is that at any stage of at whatever stage you are in your organization, you need to take a stock of what are your security measures to ensure that data loss is prevented, what additional controls you need to build in from a security solution perspective, keeping in mind the the threat scenario which is coming up and a lot of these breaches which are happening. Identify what kind of solutions you would like to look at, and then look at the market as to which solution would suit. Do a proof of concept, because most of these vendors come up with saying, okay, let us look at your data scenario, what kind of data you have, what kind of volume you have, what are the PII information which you have in your organization. They do some collection of basic information, and then they do a help us do a POC, and then we can identify whether what security solution you would like to adopt in this area of data discovery and classification. That's all I had. Now we can discuss or any questions.
I wanted to add here, Ms. Bengeri.
Yes,
Generally, when we talk about data discovery, we get down to the metadata and everything. But it was an interesting start to say that to find that single source of truth,
yes,
and then to close it with saying that we should classify the data to then have appropriate security framework around it.
yes. Yeah, it's a journey for any organization. If you look at implementing tools like
Right.
these, are definitely a 2 to 3 year plan to cover the entire gamut of data which you have as an organization. And there are always exceptions which you need to make, and hence policies are created where certain a certain set of data either needs to be kept accessible based on some legal queries for future, or that data is not, we are not able to make a decision on some part of the data, right, where we don't know how you will apply a classification uh, rule on that, right. For example, if you, as I said, if your ERP system is generating Excel sheets, or people are able to download employee specific personal data and it is floating around in the system, even if the data is 20-year-old, you need to identify how you will apply the policy to it and ensure that that data does not get uh, shared by any of the employees to employees who are not supposed to have that data. So you need to define those security mechanisms and always need to create a exception handling mechanism in such scenarios.
Absolutely. I was going through OneTrust data discovery process, and the
Mhm.
first thing they mention is that, sit with the business
Correct.
people to understand, where you could find the data, and then you apply the machine learning, so that having that holistic top level view is very important.
Very important. Yes.
Reena,
Yes.
Ramesh here.
Yes.
This epic tool, what you are going through, where
Ah,
does it fit in here with the above table? Yeah.
Epic, see, as I said, I have not explored myself because I just brought in into the discussion
Okay.
recently. I think in the
Okay.
next 2 months, I'll gain some traction on my own understanding. I'm, of course,
Okay.
only reading material now. I will get my hands into it after some time. I think in the next couple of months,
Okay.
definitely. Yes.
Okay. 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 Fair enough. Fair enough. I was going through their flyer,
Yeah.
wherein they had claimed that it is easy to integrate with O365.
Definitely, that's how it's important. I mean, that's the win for them actually, because it integrates with Microsoft, and any O365 establishment will definitely adopt it. So, but I still need to explore and see. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Hmm.
Excellent presentation, Reena. So,
Sure.
one doubt: if an organization wants to go for a full-fledged master data management, can any of these tools be completely fulfilling the needs of an MDM tool also?
No, so again, it depends on what kind of security posture of that organization is, right? we need to look at, create a baseline, right? What all aspects you have already covered. Say endpoint security is the easiest, right? You have multiple laptops in the organization, everybody is work from home. Ensure that your laptop is encrypted from data perspective, your email security is implemented, your laptop is disabled for USB drive, so that no data leak happens from their perspective. Then you need to figure out, sorry, you asked something specific,
No,
right?
I know. No, I was specifically asking about using any of these tools as an MDM tool also, like defining the master data
Huh.
for all other subsequent systems to use it. Can I use any of these tools from that perspective?
I do not have much idea on this MDM side.
Okay, sure.
Good evening, ma'am. Deepak here. Just
Yes.
one question. So, would you know of any of these tools if they can help in this situation where you have account managers who are catering to, say, specific clients? So, each account manager maybe manages 5 or 10 clients, and you don't want one account manager to be able to send to the clients managed by another one.
Yeah, so I think yeah, you need to define groups actually, groups and policies around such requirements. So a particular set of accounts which are with one account manager can be grouped under one, and then you can define the policy at that level.
Meaning, bind the individual with a domain is what you're saying, client domain.
Exactly, yes, correct, that's the way it should be.
Would any of these tools help in doing that?
No, it depends. Yeah, I think these what do you call it? Force point or force point, I'm thinking should be, see, there in the force point, if you look at, there is a network DLP module, and there is a
Okay,
endpoint module, right?
right.
Reena,
Now, yes, please.
also I think that just to add on here, one trust helps in my understanding. Okay, I was just going through one of the demo of theirs. Okay, they talking about organization, business unit, accounts under the business unit, and the projects. So to answer Deepak's query, I'm logically thinking I'm yet to get in more with respect to OneTrust. The way, very fact that the hierarchy is being established in such a way, and hence all the projects under that account is going to be grouped, and all the accounts under that particular business unit is going to be grouped, and hence it's like giving the policy what you talked about. If I'm right, OneTrust, at least I had seen the initial setup. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, just to relate my experience, One Trust, I had done a POC in 2019, and that is
Okay.
how I had approached. I had created, the processor organization, controller organization. Within controller, I had created all the support functions and the departments. Within the processor organization, we had created business units. Within business units, accounts.
Right.
Within accounts, we had identified the projects which were applicable for GDPR. Within
Right.
that, we had identified what is the data mapping, what is
Right.
the DPIA, and then did the data map at the. That's the interesting part. You create a data map at the organization level in terms of where all your PII is sitting, which
Hmm.
projects, which business units. So that is
Correct.
a very good feature in OneTrust. Yes, but to answer Deepak's question, I think OneTrust is a good example here. But I'm also thinking possibly ForcePoint should have such kind of
Hmm.
configuration, which is
Yeah.
possible. Yeah.
I think what
So,
Deepak was asking, Ms. Bengeri, your first response answered that correct, that, to have that policy and to identify that these people will only access, or
Huh.
and to have NDAs. And I think identity access management will be a right tool than, data discovery tool here, because if they already have the people identified they want the information to be with, then it can be managed by an IAM tool than a data discovery tool. I think that's what
I
maybe.
don't think if an IAM will help here, because what you need to do is put in a policy that will prevent the email from going out.
Absolutely.
So there has to be a domain blocking or something that sits between the email and the recipient.
Deepak sir, it should be there somewhere in the email server, whichever we are
Right.
offering, because and also where the encryption happens. So because nowadays means if the email server from the enterprise point of view, if the email server is the one which is encrypting, then we have to enforce rules there. So if it is not being done there, then because the traffic is encrypted, it requires where actually the decryption happens, who is actually offloading the SSL certificate. But it has to be somewhere in the email server where they will define the rules, like who can send to whom. It's not.
See, but the problem is that I evaluated DLP solutions like Netscope, which has the CASB component, and also the Indefend solution, which is the endpoint level DLP. None of these give these capability. And if you've migrated to say O365 environment, then there also you don't get much leverage. So you will need, I mean, in this particular case, which I'm saying is we need something that will sit in between and do this orchestration, or at
Yes.
least invoke some capability of existing tools to say that, okay, I'm feeding you with this particular input, which otherwise is not native to that application or tool.
See, even in a typical scenario of a service provider where you cater to multiple customers, right? And your employees are associated with a particular customer. So on a
Right,
periodic basis, as part of administration, you anyway need to move resources between domains, right?
right.
Same concept can be applied to what the account management scenario which we are talking about.
Agreed, but translating that into a technological solution, because suppose if you are saying that I've got a 15-member team
Hmm.
who catering to say two clients for all their queries. Now, if you move that to say client 4 and 5, then how do you prevent them from sending mails to those uh, you know previous clients which they were catering to?
No, that's why the shared services model is different. If you look at a dedicated model where resources are only working for two customers, when they move to a third customer, the previous two resources accesses should be removed. No, that's how you'll implement it. But I'm not sure how this
See, if
solution
your
is.
employee base is too big, then it becomes difficult. You need some
Mhm.
means to
Uh-huh.
do that, or you give the control to the business itself,
Uh-huh.
saying that this is the console, you do the changes as per your.
Sir, you need a device which will read the email header at the Y speed. So means at the network speed, otherwise it will delay. So you have to identify emails which you want to actually do this some kind of rule processing. That has to enter an email appliance which monitors it before encryption, and it sends it to the rule base. The rule base will classify, and if it is okay, it has to send it back. So it can be done only the device, like if you have an email security appliance or anything which sits at the network level before encryption. It has to see the traffic and see whether A is sending to B. If it has to be blocked, it can block it, but you cannot make it generic, because then your performance will suffer.
True.
Yeah, correct. I,
Reena, but one question,
uh,
both as an auditor and maybe also as a member of senior management, uh, how would you go about ascertaining whether the implementation of this data classification and DLP are indeed effective in a given scenario, and are they doing their job? Or because when you might approach a client and on an audit engagement, they might say, okay, we have all these solutions implemented, they started all that, blah blah blah, right? So um, what kind of procedures would you say should be performed, or how do you measure effectiveness of these implemented tools, whether data classification, discovery, data loss prevention? uh,
See, I think the understanding of how the policies have been defined is very important for the auditor, right? To interpret whether all of your business scenarios are translating to any of those policy placeholders. That is the important point, right? Then the other point also is that we need to completely depend on the administration group within the organization, where I think part of the preparation as an auditor should be to understand what is the technology stack and do our own homework in terms of what are the pros and cons of the integration of certain set of tools, right? And try to find out if there is any gap which we see could be a loophole within the security system of the organization. It's not a one straight answer here, but I'm thinking that as an auditor, you'll have to be a little more hands in into the tool base and then approach it actually.
Reena,
Just to add
just
here,
Yes,
Reena,
please.
just to add,
Mm-hmm.
Subrailu sir,
Yeah.
in fact, not from the tool perspective, but just to give you the update here, even in our PDPSI framework, right? If you look at our controls, what we talked about, we recommend strongly that compliance plan at the organization level, entity level need to be made as per the applicable laws. That is one, correct? Number two, we recommend that these need to be monitored, tracked for its successful implementation through the tools, policies, procedures, etc., through the effective governance mechanisms, what we are trying to say. And to substantiate this, we recommend that they need to have an appropriate data classification policy procedure in place. And in fact, if I have to extrapolate it in the implementation control, we have business associate approval, business contract control coming into picture, that we recommend like a kind of repository. You make all the contracts available and applicable law for that particular contract, and hence you start having multiple columns to track that whether you have done a proper data classification, under the data classification whether anything sensitive is coming into picture, like a repository at one single shot for the management. And of course other processes like whether we have a DPIA implemented as per the contract and etc. So I think that PDPSI framework also from the process perspective need to be looked into when we are talking about this kind of tool implementation. Yeah.
Yeah, Ramesh, but then I think as an auditor to the question which he raised, we need to be equipped. Of course, we will look at our processes and the governance framework and so on. It is important to see that what the organization has implemented in terms of a governance GRC tool set for cybersecurity measures. And
Absolutely.
and a lot of times these tools would have been implemented by some third party, right? So we need
Yes.
to also look at how established is that third party vendor, what are the external audits being done by the third party vendor to this organization, and what kind of gaps have been identified, and an action plan to fulfill those gaps.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also at times situation on the ground might have changed since the time the previous configurations are done, and
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
the
Yeah.
current configurations and rule changes are
Uh,
keeping pace with the changed circumstances or not. That
yes.
also would have to be looked into, right? Okay.
so what I would suggest a good measure is to look at how many false positives they're getting.
Mm.
The lesser, the better. Meaning there is some thought that is going around in making sure that the tool is actually doing what it's supposed to. Otherwise, I've seen most implementations where standard policies are applied, the false positives will be in thousands,
Hmm.
Right. Right.
and that's not a good measure.
Yeah. I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Arina, your talk was very good, but I thought e-discovery is something to help me in the forensic investigations. Because whenever we go for investigation, there at that time they said there is a new tool like e-discovery, sir, and all that, where we have to find out the required evidence in the heap of data that was available. Is there any such usage of this, or e-discovery is the right name for this or that? Because I am illiterate as far as cyber law is concerned. So e-discovery means whether the discovery to be done by an investigator while forensically examining it, or is it a tool here to secure the data? Either one of them it should be. It cannot be both. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, yeah, sure. E-discovery is a word which is electronic discovery. So basically, it is that's a word which is used by most of these tool providers, right? Basically, it is addressing the discovery process of personal data within the organization's systems, including structured and unstructured data. As I said, for example, e-discovery, the force point will give you a dump, an Excel, a dump which can be downloaded as an Excel, and then you can analyze. But that analysis of the dump to look for what data you are looking for, you need to do a little more uh, programming on it, meaning You should be able to understand what the dump is all about, what kind of data it is throwing to you, and only pick up the data which is relevant to you. So most of these tools have that capability of discovering and giving you based on the policies, giving you the output based on the policies. Then you need to apply the intelligence to it to extract what relevant information you're looking for actionable insights further.
Yeah. But is
Yeah.
there any tool available for searching the pin in the haystack? Is there any method? Because we have come across some at the time I was totally illiterate. Today at least something has come. Some fellow has saved the files, some doc as JPEG, and we searched the whole this one and 5 6 officers we were not able to trace. Then luckily one file was not opening and they said JPEG means he had some knowledge, NIC officer. So he was
Okay.
able to give that file. Then we interrogated him. Then he said, sir, I have something, I put it the tag like this, sir, to fool like that. He agreed and he opened it. But in such situation, if I mislead the investigating officers with that kind of tags where some .jpeg, instead of that, if I say it something else, can I hide the things? Is there any discovery possible of such things which are hidden like that?
Yeah, yeah. See, if you look at when you give a search capability, right, and you put the agent on the endpoint, that search capability, you can define the policy in terms of what to look for within the file. So those keywords are important in terms of what you have defined as the policy. So, for example, you will say employee ID. That employee ID can be PeopleSoft ID or a employee number. So you need to think of different combinations of that particular word and give the policy and the search. But definitely there is it's not a foolproof thing, I would say, because if you miss out something we don't know, you need to apply intelligence. Actually, it's not a easy job there.
I
That's why
think
these
No,
forensic
absolutely. But
yeah.
I think Mr. Kodandram is
the
trying to
problem.
ask, like,
Yes.
to when we apply e-discovery tools to search through evidence, like
Mhm.
text files. I know just one trust, so they can search through the text file, but not images. Even their tool is not capable of searching through
Exactly.
images, like sir
Mm.
was mentioning. If a
Yeah.
document is JPEG, so is there a tool which can search through that also and give him what he's looking for?
Not only that, I'll tell my question very easily. We were searching for an accounting document. That fellow, instead of today, these terms are known to me. Earlier, I was not knowing. It was DOC files are all of documents that I was not aware. Let me frankly accept. This fellow, the .doc has put it as .jpeg
Mhm.
and kept it. We were not able to find out. But one NIC officer who came to us, Mr. Srinivas, I remember he is now in the state government, he was able to identify. I told him how. He said, sir, some crude method, sir, it did not open. I thought there may be some other file. I tried it, then it came. We literally struggled volumes of file to find out that particular file. Is there any way where I could have discovered that DOC file has been saved as JPEG to fool us?
There is
That's
no
what
direct method, as I
very crude
said.
way I'm asking, but
Mm.
that's what the solution. People are
Kodanram sir,
hiding. Yeah.
it's the thing
Uh,
is it's
Mr.
the sorry
Mr.
sorry.
Kodanram,
Yes.
you are asking for forensic solutions in a
Yeah, I thought discovery
data
means forensic.
data administration program. Okay.
Oh,
See,
sir.
forensics, you have even steganography, there are tools, okay, to find out. Now, what you said, for example, images, the whether a particular file contains image or not, whether it contains nude images or not, there are solutions for that. Only thing is it is used in a different context in the forensic way, forensic for forces, and perhaps may be very expensive. Okay, now in the data discovery, okay, what we are looking at is identification of the PII. Now, so you have to define some rules, like if it contains at or something like that, signature, this thing, then perhaps it is an email. It's an assumption. So like that, if in an organization you have given the employee ID in a particular format, And if the same format is there, then you can say probably it is an employee ID. Okay. Now, what can be the name? I don't know. Names of different country people can be anything. Okay. It's just an ASCII character. Kodan Ram may be something which is an enigma for Chinese or something like that. So it is uncertain, but still it is easier than forensic investigation. Okay. But there are forensic tools. In fact, if you go through the NCase kind of software, you actually see the data at the bit level. Now, when I see it at the bit level, I can see what are the header information, what are the content information, whether it does not tally with the what you said is the file extension, because JPG files need to have a certain header information. DOC has to have a certain header information. If there is a mismatch between the header information inside the file in the particular sector and this, I can find out that that is a kind of a camouflaging which has been done, which is a standard process which are used by criminals to hide the cases. Okay.
Yes.
So
Very thank
it is
you,
not a sophisticated thing, sir.
Yeah.
This is very easy. Takes a list of files. Put it in, means just run file command. There will be one Windows alternative, because I don't do it in Windows. I do it in Linux. Within 2 seconds, it will give you the type of files, like whether it's a doc file, whether it's a JPEG file, whether it's a Excel file. Even if you have nominated, even if you have given an extension, different extension.
Can you share it, sir? Can you share me those details?
I have just put it in the chat box. Just file command and file name. It will give you everything. I'll just search for the Windows alternative and send it to you, sir.
Yeah, that is very helpful, because this NIC officer did it. He's a very intelligent man. He's also from Hassan. He was heading that. You must be a very senior man now. At that time, nearly, I'm talking about 12 or 13 years ago. He gave the solution in just 5 minutes later. We have struggled for nearly 3 to 4 hours. We did not know how to interrogate that fellow. But he gave us, we called him, it was night, 11 o'clock. He helped us. So I remember that. But how he did it, maybe what Navi said, in case he must be having some, in case that bit level, from there he might have ready.
Yeah.
That may be the thing. Yes. Thank you for enlightening.
Yeah.
Sure.
Forensics is different from, say, if what Reena says is some of these software people call it as EDiscovery. It is only a question of terminology. They should call it as PI discovery. Okay, EDiscovery is a much larger this thing, which has already been in use in the forensic circles. So these people should not usurp the terminology and confuse people who know about forensics. What we are doing here is personal information discovery, that is in the whole data, whether it can be identified, and if so, to what extent, what reliability levels. Okay, everything we can have some formula or algorithm, but whether it is good enough, or whether how much of false negatives are there or false positives are there, that will determine these tools. Each tool has to be analyzed on how many false positives, how many false negatives they generate. That will be the criteria under which you can perhaps classify them as useful or not useful. What do you think?
Sir, all tools are only revolving around personal information discovery. That's the basis. That's why they're called.
That is right. But there was already, and there is a forensic discovery also. What Mr. Kodan Raman is talking of, that has been in existence for before this personal information came.
Yes.
Sure. Yes.
So I want these personal information discovery people not to use terminologies which are already there in a different context. If I am a forensic person, I will object. You please find a different term.
Sure.
Okay. Don't confuse us by mixing the two, because people may misunderstand that this is a forensic tool. It is not a forensic tool.
Correct. Yes.
So, Mr. Kodanram, you've been appreciating the person who found the file type name differently, right? We appreciate that you did your homework and you know that e-discovery is specifically meant for
12 or 13
forensic.
years
Yes.
ago. 12 or 13
Yes.
years ago, that boy was so excellent. Yeah,
Yes.
he's one of the wizards we used to call. He
Hmm.
used to say he's the man. Any investigation, we used to take him.
In
Such a
legal circles, we go to the court and get permission for e-discovery. Say,
Oh,
because any person who is holding data will not submit the data which is advantageous to the opposite party, is it not? So if
correct.
I have to get that information, there is a process called e-discovery. In US, it is well developed because I think it was in Microsoft case when one of the cases, the emails of these employees were obtained on a e-discovery basis and then analyzed, and then it was self-incriminating for Microsoft. You know, in legal this thing, I'm not supposed, I cannot be forced to give a self-incriminating evidence. Okay.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
you may think that if you go through my laptop, so you may get some evidence which is beneficial to you. So I will not give that. So courts have a system where you can approach the court, and if you convince them, they will give a like a warrant. They will give
Oh,
a e-discovery warrant based on which you can collect and then do forensic analysis. So
oh,
e-discovery is that process. This PI discovery is a different process. Okay.
oh,
Yeah.
sure.
Ms. Bengeri, we really
thank you, sir.
appreciate the way
It
you
was
hold
really.
on to the question from
Shalini,
end
one
to
second.
end. Yes,
Shalini, one
sir.
second. I
Sure,
want
sure.
to thank Navi because this I had forgotten, and Reena for bringing back this. Otherwise, I thought, what is this e-discovery and privacy? This one, I was really worried. Now things are very clear. We need to give a new name for this. We have to rechristen. I think it can come from FDPPI. You can give it.
Definitely.
Don't call it as EDP. You can make a write up tomorrow, sir.
You can
On
say PI discovery is sufficient. If you
PI
say PI
discovery.
discovery, that is good enough.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Hmm.
Sure.
you
Okay.
can go ahead.
So
Hmm.
it's an evolving concept. Like I misunderstood Mr. Deepak's question. So it's been very engaging session, Ms. Bengeri.
Sure.
I want to request Anant to say a word of thanks for you, please.
Yes, thanks, ma'am. So it was a very wonderful session because technology thing, and I learned many things because I'm not.
Anandji, can we see you? We want to see your
Uh,
face, man.
Yes.
I'll share. Right now, and I'll share next time, sir. Uh, so
So
Okay.
he believes in preserving his privacy,
no,
so
no,
he would never share with.
so and I'm but it was a wonderful session. Means personally I liked it very much because the comparison technology wise it was very accurate and very insightful because like 2 weeks ago means I got to see this tool which Conan Ram sir was asking about, CISA radar, nothing to do with that company. I just went through their website which does PII discovery. They are actually into PCI thing, so I just went through their thing. So it does it, and means, and I was also means I was asking my company to do research on the same, but EDR kind of a thing. So it was very accurate, and it was an excellent session. And it will come because when Koran Ram sir was speaking about forensics, because nowadays it has changed because now it's encrypted. Even malware actors are encrypting their traffic. So we have to do much of the things at the endpoint, and these things will become really important. And it's not only because Microsoft had this thing to encrypt, means to catch if we are sending credit card numbers. It can easily in the Exchange server we can configure. But now the scope has widened, and there are a lot of policy things where we can define what goes and what is sensitive information. So this was really good, map means. And then when if you get next time to show us a demo on some tool which you're working, that will also be good.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think I'm just moving in that direction now.
Sure, sure.
Definitely, I will love to share my learnings from there. In the next 2 3 months, I think max. Yeah.
And why this is very important is
Mm.
just 1 minute. I was listening to a person who does threat hunting, has his company's threat hunting.
Uh-huh.
So and what they do is why this becomes very important is the initial thing is when someone attacks and installs some malware which captures, say, credit card numbers, which happens nowadays most of the times, they want to get the data out. So the first thing is someone will try to infect your machine, either through phishing or something. If they get hold of your machine, the next thing will be a DNS query or a SMTP query.
Correct.
So that's where this becomes very important, and that is very difficult to catch. As means Kodan was saying, there's so much data, and there are tools which try to predict, and these tools actually send at a particular pattern. So every 30 minutes they will send some information to their master server. So these becomes these kind of tools can become, and with some tools which can identify that particular malware traffic will become very important in upcoming days. That's where we are struggling as a security industry because of the data, too much data. So this will become very important. And I really personally, I like this session very much, actually. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reena.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bengeri.
Thank you.